Foundation is a really refreshing twist on city building, blending organic medieval villages with super deep economy and resource management, with also cool innovation like modular buildings. I finished a great let's play from start to finish a few weeks back to celebrate version 1.0 release of the game, and I've spent so many hours in this game that I felt it was the perfect time for me to do a what I wish I knew earlier type of video to help you all. And frankly also for me to remember before I start a new let's play, because I definitely want to play this game more in the future. Before we get into the actual tips, one thing I did want to mention, because I see so many people not play with this, is here in the top left corner you have visibility, where you are able to put a couple of layers and toggle what you want to see on the screen. So for example, do you want to be able to see all of your beautification, right? Especially when you're creating a new city, to see all of the beautification and to see where there is no beautification, right? That is really powerful. But you have many others, right? We have, for example, over here, the undesirable neighborhood. So again, this is something you're going to want to avoid close to your city. Your fortification, what is fortified versus what is not. You can see all of the zonings. So there is multiple, right? And you can combine them or not combine them, the boundaries of your city, etc. Tip number 1, let's talk about your village center placement. This is the first building you're gonna need to place when you start a new city. This is where your new people joining will come. This is also temporary storage, especially at the beginning of the game. So it's quite an important thing. But what not many people know is you can actually move it. You can click on edit the building over here and then click on it and you can move it anywhere you want. So in my case, for example, at the beginning, actually my first, city was somewhere over here, and that's where it started. But now I've moved it all the way over there. So don't think about the final placement, right? At the beginning of the game, think about where it makes sense to put it for that moment. And at that time, you need to make sure it is close to a couple of resources. You want it placed strategically close to many of the resources so that you can kickstart, your development pretty quickly. And that's what I had done by placing it at the beginning over here. It was close to wood and to many berries. It was close to the stone over here. It wasn't that close, but it wasn't that far to water either. So these are the type of things you need to keep in mind when you start a new city. And by the way, to conclude on this tip, I said you can move, your village center, you can move everything. You click on edit the building and then you will be able, to move any of these buildings. Now it will always cost a bit of resources based on what this building is. If it's a very basic building, it will cost very little. If it's a huge building, like for example, I don't know, a big church like this one, right? If we take this church there and we say we want to actually move the whole thing. And by the way, to move the whole thing, you double click on it, then you can move the whole thing. So this will cost obviously a lot more resource. But this is a great feature that you are able to move things. Tip number 2, layout is super critical in Foundation across two main dimensions. The first one, desirability, the second, productivity. So let's talk about both. First, desirability. Well, your villagers, they will only create houses because you don't create houses yourself, right? You just tell them, oh, you want to create a house, in a certain region, for example, over here. Okay, you want them to create a house there, but they will only do that if the desirability is high. So how do you get a high desirability? Well, you can add decorations, right? A decoration like this will give you a bit of beautification, a bit of good green, right? It's green, so that is nice. But the main thing you have to do, to be honest, is to ensure your productions that are undesirable are not too close from your cities. So if you see over here, all of these productions, right, they have a red, brownish circle next to them. This is undesirability. So instead of being desirable, this is going to be the opposite. So you definitely don't want your houses to be too close to that. And again, the way you see this is you click on any of the production, now you're going to see the circle, right? And you want to avoid the circle touching any of your houses. So you want to ensure that your productions are not too close from your houses. But at the same time, you're going to want your productions to be not too far from your houses either. Because why? Because your people actually need to move from their house to their workplace. If the distance is more than 150 meters, they will straight up not want to do it. They will be unhappy going to work. So anyone, you can click on any of your commoners or peasants, you will be able to see their workplace distance. This one's 74 meters. So, okay, that is below the 150. It's not too far. That person will be fairly happy to go to work and you will have a good productivity, right? Meaning they will be producing here as high as possible. Now, this one says 50%. I'll explain why in a second, but you basically want to make sure, right, it is not zero. So to recap, tip number 2, the layout of your city is quite important, where you want all of the undesirable productions to not be too close to your city, but also not too far. Tip number 3, logistic is therefore really key. As I said, you don't want your production to be too far from your houses. But what you also want to do is try to keep, similar production next to each other, try to have smart warehouses, etc. So let me go into a bit more detail on what I mean by this. Well, let's take the bread production, for example. It is going to start over here into a wheat farm, producing wheat. And this wheat is going to be sent into a windmill, right? Transforming this wheat into flour. Then this flour is going to be sent into a bakery where we're going to take flour and water to make bread. And you can see that each of those buildings, they have a bit of internal storage. For example, the bakery can store 60 of flour. The windmill can store 180 of the wheat. If we put, those buildings close to each other, what is going to happen is that when we finish producing the wheat, so the millers that work in the windmill, what are they going to do? Well, they need some wheat. If there's wheat already inside the windmill, perfect, we start producing. If there's no wheat in the windmill, they're going to try to get some, right? And you don't want them to have to walk too far. So what you're going to want to do is probably have, the wheat farm very close. And then it's the same, right, for the bakery. If it doesn't have any flour, it's going to want to get flour. So you want to be able to get flour close by. So the first part here, again, to repeat, is for production that are linked to each other, make sure that you put them close by so that they can benefit from, low distance. There are many other, of course, right, like you want your lumber camp to be close to your sawmill. You want your tailor workshop to be close to your weaver's hut that in turn needs to be close from your sheep farm. So try to create, those production chain kind of blocks, right? And then what you're going to want to do is to put warehouses like this one over here or granaries like this one over here with transporters. These are workers in those buildings that are going to help you to transport all of those resources. For two reasons. You're going to want your productions to be not too close to your houses. So what that means is instead of having, all of the farms really next to your houses, you're going to want a granary next to your houses. Because that way the markets, right, can just pick in the granary the resource instead of having to go to all of the productions, which may be quite far. Similarly, the way Foundation actually plays is you're going to have multiple smaller cities. Like here we have one, then we have another one over here, another one there, another one there. You're going to have multiple cities across the region, each, if possible, at the end of the game, focus on different kind of productions based on what is available over there. And so then you're going to need those granaries and transporter to really transport on long distances those resources. Let's assume, for example, that, I will make all of my meat in this corner. Now I need meat in all of the villages, right? So I need a granary there to get that meat and again and again. So that's the idea. And again, to make sure that you have your production close to each other, to have then also warehouses and granaries to centralize those productions. And speaking of centralization, what you can also do, by the way, with any of these granaries and workshops is warehouses, is you can change their name. Here I can say, okay, this is going to be my wood one. So then it's easy to find. Tip number 4, having a couple of deep forests, dense forest is really key in Foundation. Why? Because there are multiple productions that really require this. The first one right at the start of the game is going to be your gathering huts for your berries. They will, really be in those forests. But more importantly, you have the hunter's hut over here for the boars. This is a production, these boars, they're going to only spam where you have a deep forest. This is, I think, the, smallest size you can get. You need definitely big forest when you want a lot of those boars. And of course, there are others, like you're going to want to cut wood, you're going to want to make your coal out of wood, etc. So all of these, they will rely on the forest. So every time you cut trees, make sure that you also reforest, right, with those foresters camp, and you need to paint an area where you're going to reforest, right, wherever you're cutting. What I do want to also mention here as a really advanced tips is that there are several productions that you can combine. So as I mentioned, you want to, for example, have your hunters and your gathering hut there. It's fine to have both, they're not going to challenge each other. But more importantly, what you can also do is to put dairy farms. Because those dairy farms, they need pretty big pastures, but they can actually be inside, this forest. This way, you're not wasting any space. You know that you need the space already of the forest for many things. Then put also those dairy farms there. The only thing you need to do is you need to reforest before you do that, because you cannot reforest on the dairy farm. Tip number 5, road planning. One of the amazing features of Foundation is that it's fully organic, right? As I mentioned, especially for your houses, you're going to place a residential zone and then they're going to create houses. But it is the same for your road. You're not going to place road, you are just going to have road auto-created by your people. Wherever they walk a lot, it's going to create a road. And they're important because they can speed up their travel. They're also needed for your top houses or top quality houses. one of the requirements is paved road. You can see these guys here, they're paving. So having paved road is quite important, and they will pave only where a road was already created. But the key tip that I want to share over here, it's not just about praying. You can actually control that pretty well. There is two elements I want to mention to control. The first one is especially around your fields like this. I think it is really critical to control your people, because if people start walking on the field, they will actually decrease the output. They will basically kill the plants there, right? So you don't want that to happen. The way I do this for me there is always with fences. They don't cost a lot and they look pretty well good, you know, in terms of also those farms, and they will prevent anybody from crossing, right? Nobody can go through that fence, and therefore they're going here, right? They're going there because they're fences. So this is the first one. But there is another one, another way to do it that is in some ways even more powerful. Let me show you. No, sorry, I need a place that I own. Okay, here it is. Let's create a big space. So here it is. I want a city like this. And I want to make sure maybe that there is a road in the middle and there's no roads on the side. Well, you can actually do this. You have here this forbidden. This is going to forbid anyone from walking somewhere. So then you're going to press, control and your middle mouse button to reduce the size. And we're going to do something like this. We're going to continue over here, and then like this, that, do the same on the other side. There it is. I'm making quick and dirty, but you can make it as pretty as you want. So basically it means nobody's going to be able to walk there. So what's going to happen is your citizens, they're going to walk here, they're going to create a road. They may create roads inside, but that's fine. The important thing for you was to make sure they create a big road there and they don't go and mess up whatever you have here. So yeah, you can use this forbidden to also help you. But again, I do suggest also using these fences. And with this, you can really create roads wherever you feel are needed to manage your city well. Tip number 6, let's talk about promotions. Why do they even exist? When should you do it? And all of this. So promotions are quite critical because they will, in essence, double your productivity, but only for certain buildings. We're going to talk about, in which case you should do it. But first, I want to also mention that you shouldn't do it all the time. It is not because you can. Like, let's assume I have this serf over here. She's very happy, right? She's getting everything she wants. Obviously, she has a bit of taxes. She doesn't love taxes, but apart from that, she has everything she wants. She's working close to her house, all of this. And I have the money. I could promote her into a commoner in this case. The basic is serf, then you move to commoner, and then you move to citizen. So I could promote her, but I shouldn't, unless I need to. And so we're going to talk about when do you need to. Now, why do I say you shouldn't? Because the more you upgrade them, the more they're going to ask a lot of things. If we look over here, she only wants water, one rustic food, housing. She wants us actually a basic low-level house. And then, if you give her on top one refined food and services, she's even happier, but she doesn't need it. She will not leave if she doesn't have it. Versus a commoner, already you boost to a couple of things. One is the house. He or she doesn't want, a basic house. They want a medium house. On top of this, instead of having, just one rustic food, they want 2 refined food as a basic need. Not even as a, advanced one, as a basic one. And they want the services too as a basic need, essential need. And then on top of that, they will want 2 new things. They're going to want entertainment, 1, and goods, 1 good. If you move then to the citizens, it's even more, right? They're going to want 3 types, so all types of refined foods, which are not that easy. They're also going to want the top level of houses. They're going to want entertainment as basic needs. And then for the additional needs, they're going to want luxury and 2 goods. So every time, you increase, you promote somebody, they're going to need new things. And again, if you don't have those things, like if you haven't started to produce, for example, refined foods, they will become unhappy and then they will leave. So you do not want, to do this. The only reason you may want to upgrade a couple of people is, let's assume you have a lot of those resources and you are low on money, then you may want to upgrade a few because, your commoners, they give you more money. Instead of 6, they give you 16, and your citizen, they give you 36 instead of 16. So again, only if you have all of the resources, right? You're swimming in resources, but you're low on money, then maybe you promote people that don't really need to be promoted. So now let's talk about what do I mean by need to be promoted. And by the way, I can show you that you can move all of those things, no problem. So we have this butchery over here. I have 2 people working there, but unfortunately their productivity is only 50%. Why? Because they are serf, and this is a production that is best suited to commoners. So basically, if I had two commoners over here, they would be 100% productivity. So this is one that should actually be upgraded or promoted to the next level, because now here it is, our productivity is 100%. And obviously, space is very limited, the number of people is very limited, so that makes sense, to try to promote them. Yes, you need to give them more things, but they will produce more too. On the other hand, if I take this lumber camp here, this is best suited to serf. So anybody here that is not a serf is a waste of resource. It's not going to help anything. You're consuming resource but not gaining any. Then you also have a couple of productions, that need citizens, and it's the same concept. Where is this guy? Maybe over here. Yes, the tax office, for example, right? That's based to citizen. And again, this is the same concept where if you have a problem, if somebody is a serf or commoner, then the productivity is decreased. In this case, I think we have one citizen and one commoner, so we have a 75%. And by the way, last point over here, this is not just for your citizens, your serf, commoner citizens, this also applies to your monks and to your soldiers. So for example, on the religious side, the basic level is your novices, right? Then they're going to be promoted into a sister or brother. And then there is one more level, I forgot, but let's do it together. It is the prioress. And then it's the same for your soldiers. You can have militiamen, but you're going to also have your normal soldiers. 700 people in my city, so quite a lot here. Here we have the brothers, commoners, where are the soldiers? Yeah, soldiers. And this one can be also graded, but it needs to have enough experience. That's why it's stuck there. It needs to have more experience before we can upgrade. The top level is the knights, right? So this is the top level knights. And as you can see, they are requiring quite a lot of things. 2 refined foods, they want luxury, services, goods, entertainment, versus your basic soldiers won't. And again, same for the religious track. So only promote people when you need to, but remember it is a big boost, right? You're doubling your production there, so definitely do it when we can. I still have many powerful tips coming, but before, please take 5 seconds to smash the like button. It really does help a lot. Have you done it yet? I'm waiting. Okay, thank you. Let's move on with tip number 7. We've talked about the promotion of people. What about the promotion or the upgrades of houses? I did mention already that you do need a high-level houses for high-level promoted people. This is the quality over here. But to be honest, quality is not really the important thing over here. I want to talk more about density. Why? Because basically quality is not going to change that much. The quality is basically just if you have people that have been promoted to commoner, they want, medium level quality. And if you have citizens, they want the high quality housing to make them happy. But it doesn't give you any other bonuses. On the other hand, house density, you can do that regardless of the level of your people, serfs, commoner, and citizen. You can have whatever density you want. So you can also do it a lot quicker. And honestly, this one gives you a huge bonus because when you build a new house, you can only fit 2 people into that low density house. But then when you move to medium density, you can fit 6. So it is the equivalent of 3 houses of low density. And when you move to high density, like we have some here and we have many others, you move to 10, so the equivalent of 5. And like in most games, space is very limited, but in this one it's even more so, because remember what we talked about right at the start, which is that you want to put your people not too far, but not too close to their workplace either. So having a very dense place of population and then a lot of productions around is basically the way to go in foundation. And this is not only possible with those high density housing. So you may be wondering, okay, how do I get there? Well, to the medium density, you need light fortification and you need patrol coverage. And then for the high density, you need heavy fortification. So there's been a lot of debates on, what is the best way to do this. There's kind of a lot of different ways to get there, but I'm going to talk about the best way, in my opinion, to get there. Because if you look over here, you have the village watchtower. This will give you light fortification. Then you have the city watchtower. This will give you heavy active fortification, and you can also have patrols coming from there. Then you have rustic castle, so this one is light fortification, and you can have patrol. Same for the modest castle. This one is heavy. Then you have village fortification. This will give you light passive one. And then you have castle fortification, where you actually have different levels. So this one will give you light passive, and this one heavy passive. So to make it very concrete, is if you look over here, right, we have a rustic castle watchtower. This is giving, if we move it, you're going to see in a second, this is giving here, in this area, this will give light fortification. Versus here we have that one, this will give in that area heavy fortification. Then you also, to make it even more complex, you have some other buildings like the tax office and others. They also do provide, light or heavy fortification, as you can see in the purple there. And then last but not least, you have those big walls, like for example, that wall over here, right? This is providing heavy fortification to everything inside. And so actually, this is basically the tip is, in my opinion, you should go as quickly as you can for those fortification, either village or castle, doesn't really matter, so that you don't need any watchmen. Because if you look at those towers over here, this modest castle watchtower, or these two here, they actually need watchmen, which will come from a watch post. So here you have patrollers and watchmen. So the patrollers will give you that patrol one, and then the watchmen is the people that will then be sent to this to give it this power. Without it, it's not gonna work. So this is why it's called active, is because you need people to come here to make it work. On the other hand, when you have a wall like this doesn't need anybody. This will work forever, no problem. So this is, in my opinion, a lot more powerful, and I suggest you go with that as much as possible. On the watch post, I also suggest that you don't do what I did here, which is to build a big one to have a lot of patrol people. Instead, I suggest you create a few small ones, because when you have a big one, they tend to all go to the same places. They are a lot less efficient. So instead, create a small one here, then create a small one there, then create a small one here, etc. That will be a lot more efficient. And I really wish I knew that before. So yes, you want to get as quickly as you can into this heavy density. There is really a light cost, especially if you go with, fortification for it, and there is no drawback. You will just get a lot more people in that small space. Tip number 8, let's talk about money. Like in most games, you want to make sure you're making good money, you're in positive profits, right? Money is going to be useful for many things, from research to buying things to promoting your people. So let's talk about a couple of tips. First of all, you have this budget here that can be really useful to see where you're making money, where you're maybe spending money, for example, in terms of buying things, in terms of upkeep. Some things cost a lot more, like my city market there, which frankly I made just because it's there and I wanted to have built everything. It is costing a huge amount of upkeep, right, compared to many of my other buildings. So pay attention to this. If you're in negative, you can check over here and see some of the problems. Also, I will mention right away that, for managing your money, don't over expand too quickly. Each of the building, as we just mentioned, or most of them, they have some upkeep. They will cost you coins to maintain. And similarly, for your territories, every time you increase, you take over a new territory, it will cost you, for example, 80 right now coins. If I take a new one here, it's going to be 85. And then one more, 90, etc. So it will continue to increase. So definitely don't over expand. Only take what you need, and then slowly but surely you can expand. Tip number 2 is there is a really, really good mandate that you get really at the beginning of the game, which is to have a levy. You click on discuss over here, and basically, you can forget it, I changed my mind, or you can do it. When you do it, it's going to take a lot of money from your people at the cost of an happiness, bonus, or not bonus, but decrease of 30%. But this is not forever. It's basically for a couple of days, your people are going to be unhappy, but in exchange, you got a lot of coins. You also cannot do it every single day. There is a, I think, 7-day cooling period. Let me show you. I'm sure we're going to see it. Here it is. So there is a 7-day cooling period. So you shouldn't do it. You cannot do it all the time, and you may not want to do it all the time. But at the beginning of the game, to be honest, you should use it. This is one of the best way to get money at the beginning. And yes, a 30% decrease in happiness is not great, but when you have only serfs and you're giving them everything, it's easy. Then another thing for money, it's not just about kind of making it, it's about collecting it. What do I mean? Well, let's right click on the coins here. And now you can see coins have appeared everywhere. Because what happens is you generate coins, for example, in your houses with your taxes, you generate coins in that house. Or if you have a tax on your market, you generate the tax in the market. And then you need a collector to come and take them. So it is actually quite good to, from time to time, do this right click to check if you see very low numbers everywhere, that's fine. It's all good, right? If you see very high number, that's a problem. In particular, if you see a number that is at the max, right? So in this case, this house can get 100 of tax stored. If you get to 100, then at that point, it means two things. One is there's not enough collectors because it should never get to the max. But two is you're starting to lose money because you cannot put more money into the house. The money is, they want to give you the taxes, but there's nowhere to put it. So you're starting to lose it. So again, from time to time, you can check different part of your city. Is it low? If it's low, it's good. If it gets to very high, right here, I don't see 100, so that's fine. So it is, for example, here, you can see there are two buildings that are full. It is too high. And it makes sense because the reality is my tax office, my tax collectors, they're all the way over there. So this was one of the further places for them. Now the collector just came here, but again, I probably lost a couple of coins because it came when it was already full. And then this one is already full and nobody's coming. So you can do two things now. You can either edit this tax office to make it bigger. We're going to talk about those things later on, but basically the way you do it is you put another building there, for example, and now it says capacity 2 + 2. So we have 2 today and we would add 2 more. So that way I would have more tax collectors so that they can work more. Or what you can do is put another tax office maybe more closer to here, right? Because clearly, again, this is a bit far. So make sure that you collect the money. It's not just about kind of deciding that you want high taxes. You need to collect it. Then in terms of the ways of making money, there are actually quite a lot of ways. As you can see here, I have taxes on my residence, on market stalls, on taverns. Then you have also other ways in terms of trade, etc. The tip here though is one, remember as I mentioned earlier that the citizens give you a lot more. So do try to have some citizens. And then every time you unlock some of these, my suggestion is just put it on, get more taxes, right? You're going to unlock these along the game. And for trading, different people will tell you there's different metas, like things that you can sell for a lot of money that are easy to produce. Yes, they are, but I think the more important tip there for all of you out there is try to unlock each of these trade routes or several of those trade routes early so that you can, one, sell surplus of everything because each of these trade routes can only buy and sell a certain amount of things. So if you have more of them, you're going to be able to sell more different things. And on top of this, having a couple of these trade routes unlock early could help you if you're stuck, you're missing a certain resource and you're a bit stuck, you can import it. It will cost you a lot of coins for sure. You never want to import if you don't have to, but it can save you. So yeah, make sure that you are collecting your money, that you're taxing different things, that if possible you're trading export rather than getting imports in. And last but not least, do expand your treasury from time to time, because at the beginning you definitely won't have more than 13,000 of reserves. You will have a very small one, which may not be even enough for some of your research. One tip there is, you can have a treasury hidden like I did over here. Basically the wall here of the castle is a big treasury. It's a treasury that's giving me almost 10,000 of capacity. So you can do cool stuff like this too. Tip number 9. Let's talk about the fact that some productions are actually a lot easier than others. And so you want to know which one are easier, focus on these, especially for export, and then just make sure you have just enough of the other ones. So a very early example is the basic food, or rustic food as it's called. You have over here one fisher hut. This only takes one surf and will be producing a lot of fish. And those fishes, they're not unlimited, nothing is unlimited in the game, but they're pretty unlimited. There's usually enough fish on a lake or river for many of these. On the other hand, the gathering hut, which again, both of these is very early game. It's gonna take 3 surf and it's not producing more. I guarantee you, it is not, at least in my games. I haven't seen the exact numbers, this is not a game where you have a lot of the numbers in the front end. So I can't tell you, this is a 30 seconds production, for example. But yeah, 3 people versus 1. So fish is a lot easier there. Similarly, you have then for the advanced food, the bread, many people say bread is hard. Bread is not hard. Bread takes space because you need farms that do have a lot of space, but bread is actually very easy and it produces a lot. A farm like this is going to produce tons of wheat, and then tons of wheat is going to be made into a bit less flour, but still a lot of flour. And then a bit of flour is transformed into more bread. So with something like this, you can make enough bread for hundreds of people versus the other types of food, advanced food, and in particular the cheese. the cheese is really hard to make a lot of, in my opinion. First of all, we said bread takes space, but cheese also takes a lot of space because you're gonna need those dairy farms that requires, a lot of space. And then you're gonna need a cheesemaker, which is now 5, and this is not served, this is commoners. While on this side, the farms is just serfs, and the miller is also serf. It's only the bakery that is commoners, but again, this is only 4 versus the other one is 5, and I can guarantee you that you will need a lot less bakeries than you need cheesemakers. So again, I didn't show you, I know, some of the maths behind it, but I can guarantee you that some productions are easier than others. And so especially if you think about, for your serf, what is the one food you give them all? It's a lot easier to give them fish. And then if you think about, what do I want to export? Do I export some bread or do I export cheese? I say you should export the bread for sure. And then last but not least, tip number 10, the modular buildings. They are really important. I've been showing you some of them, but we didn't really discuss them. So let's discuss them. They're really powerful, and especially for something like the faith. Let's take the church as an example. First of all, you won't have all of this unlocked at the start, but even if you had, and let's assume you're creating a new city, you don't need to create something so big like I did before. You can start with this that will have 24 of capacity. And then if you click on your church and at the end of the week, you can see that the attendance is full, that means it's not big enough, right? You need more, you need a bigger one. So then you go into this, right? And you're gonna click on edit and you're gonna add something new, right? Now this is not very big. Let's add this one. And now instead of 24, we go to 36. And then when 36 is not enough, you add more, you go to 45, right? And you continue increasing and increasing to support your population without overspending. You don't need to overspend, in particular in resources and time, right? It's gonna take a long time if you want to build the whole thing right away. I do want to mention also a bit of a cheat there is you are actually able to place the same building or a different one on the same place. So now, I've put 2 of these there and my capacity has increased to 69. I can put another one again and now 93. So it's a bit of a cheat, but it may help you, especially if you're trying to make like a really pretty city without, breaking the game in terms of gameplay. Before you are finished, no, we're gonna talk about 2 bonus tips. The first one is it is possible to break the game by having a trade price bonus of 1 million or 1,000, or at least like I did over here of more than 100%, meaning, you increase the price of everything you sell, you double it. This is a bit of I call it, breaking the game, because I don't think they intended this, but basically if you have a belief office, if you go into edit and you start adding a lot of these ornaments, where are my ornaments? You add a lot of those ornaments, the more ornaments you add, when you put a new belief into it, the number is going to increase. Now, I'm not going to make a full description of it because again, I feel this is cheating and I don't want to go into too much detail, but if you want me to make a specific video on it, put it in the comments below. And then last but not least, if you go to your royal book on the first page, I did want to mention that like you can change the name of all of your buildings and all of your people, you can also change your name later on, and you can change also, your rank. Am I a pioneer or not? Now I'm going to be a mayor, for example, right? Save it. And you can also change your shield and emblem and all of this. Not just at the beginning of the game when you set it up, but also later on if you want to. So it is, ladies and gents, top tips to survive and thrive into Foundation, this amazing city builder. Don't hesitate if you want to see more to look at the full let's play that is now on the screen. And I hope to see you next time.